Hi everybody, welcome back. It's Chris Petri. Thanks for stopping by. We're going to have a good time today. We're going to talk about technique a little bit. We're going to talk about some interesting ways you can, let's say, change your technique or try new things that can just be an interesting, kind of like a journey uh, into some new areas of your technique and your art as a watercolor artist. I hope this is helpful and that everyone has some fun and enjoys this series. Probably we'll this will be a 3 or 4 part series, I would say. A lot of stuff to cover here, and we're going to be doing some really wet washes, so that takes time to dry, and so we really can't go too fast. But it's warm in my studio. The heat's turned up, so things will probably dry a little quicker. Um, Now, the first thing is I figured let's throw in some technique, some a little bit of study things. You can grab a pad of paper maybe and just write down a few things as we go along here. I'm a big person on taking notes if you can. Just a nice notepad of paper and a Sharpie or a pencil or a pen. And if you write down a couple key concepts here and there, it can be a big help because if you're going to do a painting and you want to do some practicing, you can kind of go back to your notes and just look and say, oh yeah, that's fun to practice this subject or this technique in watercolor. So the first thing I'd like to talk about in this painting, because it's sort of important, and that would be sometimes you hear you might have heard this. Have you heard this before? People say, well, that was a high key painting or a low key painting. So you'll probably see in some art books here and there, they talk about paintings being like high key, low key, middle key. And in essence, it's just really how dark or light the tonal values are in a painting. So if you have a high key painting, your tonal values, so let's write this down here. We'll just put down high key, middle key, and low key. Okay, so now again, these terms are sort of, you see them a lot in watercolor books and tutorials, and people talk about it on their YouTube videos. Sometimes I've heard people talk about this concept, but in watercolor it's really important because you can kind of, you know, you can create a painting in, let's say, a high key, middle key, and low key format or style. So in essence, you can take one painting you might be working on and then create 3 different paintings. And you might do one in high key, one in middle, and one in low key. And then you'll kind of see how these 3 relate to, let's say, the time of the day. So high key would be like bright sunlight. So this might be a high key painting. This is a high key painting, extremely bright light. So let's say this is probably a table and there's a window and there's a lot of strong, powerful light coming through the window, maybe like, middle of the day time. So that would be considered a high key painting. And then if we were to say, looking at this painting, and these are all paintings I did for YouTube, so these are actually my tutorial paintings that I've done over the last year and a half or so. So this one here, we consider this like a middle key painting. You can see the tonal values are, kind of a lot of middle tones, some darks here and there, and then just a few little bits of light here and there, very bright lights. So that would be considered a middle key. And again, the high key would be lots of bright white paper with smaller amounts of, like, your middle tones and your darker tonal values. And this would be so that would be middle key. And then low key would be lots of darker tonal values in your painting with just a little bit of lights here and there. And this is a really beautiful effect in watercolor. A lot of artists use this. So you can see how this, is the opposite of high key. So high key is lots of white paper, lots of brightness and light, with some middles and darker tonal values, but very sparingly. And then, of course, this is lots of darker tonal values with some spots and areas of bright light. So that's a strong, powerful effect. Looks great. And then your middle key is, again, just, more or less middle tones, middle tonal values, and some sparkles of light here and there, and some spots of darker tonal values here and there. Okay, so now we have some theory here, some interesting technique ideas. Again, I used to practice this a lot. I used to take like one painting and then paint it in high key, middle key, and low key, and you get some interesting effects from it. And again, that can relate to your time of day too. Like if it's the end of the day and it's sort of like sunset, or the end of the day, maybe it's right before the sun is setting, that would be low key. So you might have the sun setting in the distance of this painting and the lights sort of dimming at the end of the day, and you have that effect of things being a lot more, the tonal values are darker and it might be sort of turning towards nighttime. And then middle key is probably, midday, early morning, late afternoon, still lots of light. And then, of course, like high key would be, very bright sunlight, maybe, right in the middle of the day around noontime. Tons of bright sunlight and no clouds, lots of sun. This could be a cloudy day. So your key can be, your high, middle, and low key can be sort of a technique that you'll use to kind of capture the time of day as well when you're painting, or if you're painting outdoors, or you're painting from photographs, or however you're creating your painting, you can kind of use that as like a nice gauge. So I thought that'd be helpful just to kind of have that idea. So the painting we're going to do today is a low key painting, middle to low key, but I would say it's a low key painting, and it's probably around sunrise or sunset. I would say this painting is probably going to be like maybe sunrise, like early morning. And what we'll do is, because of copyright issues, I am working from a photograph of another artist's work. So we'll just, and I'll try to just have a fun time here, and I'm going to contour draw this scene. I'm not talking much here. I'll try to talk as I go here just to kind of explain. So I'm just contour drawing, so I'm just really kind of like taking a trip through the painting here and looking at the photograph across from me and trying to capture what I'm seeing the best that I can. It doesn't have to be perfect when you're working from photographs or even outdoors. You don't have to be perfect with everything. You try to go, slow enough that you're capturing the angles correctly. But if, you wouldn't have to try to make everything exactly accurate. And we'll go with, so this will be it. Okay, that's a telephone pole. It's a little bit slanted, but that's not a big deal. Kind of looks a little interesting. And a little bit of some trees or shrubs over here on the side. And I had a temporary issue here in my studio. My platform I'm standing on is sort of falling over. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm actually standing on a board with a plastic bin underneath it, and the plastic bin started to give way, so I almost flew off the platform here as I'm standing. I'm trying to get myself higher up for this video so that I can paint with different brushes today, which is a little different technique. So in essence, the board that I'm working on is going to be lower. So this is just a temporary challenge we have in the studio. And again, I'm just going across here and trying to okay, and then some lines, just to sort of show the grass and the ground here. And then let me keep an eye on the time here. Okay, we're still in good shape with time, so we will continue on here. Okay, so that's the roof over here. Now we're going to do a fence. So now the fence can be, I'm just going to we're going to paint the fence here. It's a wooden fence, and I'm going to paint it very loosely when I paint it in this painting. So I'm not going to draw it like, draw every thing here. I'm just going to kind of put guide markers for myself as to where the posts go. And this will kind of help. And then a couple, we have a door over here. This is a shed over here. There's a doorway in there. So I'm sort of just working my way around. Not getting too fussy with things. This is like a broken fence post there maybe, and then another over here going across there. Okay, pretty loose. As you can see, this drawing is not exact. And then we have a large, then we're going to have some, we'll put a couple cross posts on the telephone pole here. And here, just a couple dots, just to remember, I'm going to put a couple little dots of paint on the tops of these cross members on this telephone pole, and maybe we'll do even a couple little lines of wires for the telephone pole. Here we're going to make tree shapes, and this is where we're going to get lots of darks in our painting. So this is all going to be like tree forms, and then we're just going to leave some spots of light here and there through here with some branches showing through. So here we're going to have just a few spots of light, paper, and then the rest of this is going to all be dark tonal values of rich green and gold colors. So you can imagine we're going to have a huge portion of trees back here with leaves and dark tonal values, and then this is all going to be darker and middle tones, and we'll just have a couple bright lights of highlights on some of the things around here and there. And this section of sky over here is going to be like blue paper for the blue sky. So essentially this majority of this is going to be like a low-key painting, which will be very dramatic with some lights in it here and there. Okay, let's maybe get a little more interesting. All right, that looks good. Okay, we'll come back, part 2, and we'll start painting. Okay, we'll be right back.